Get ready to do life and business on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. You either make excuses or you choose to level up. Amazing guests living the big ticket life. Woo! Woo! Brandon Brittingham.
Appreciate you having me here today, man.
It's that kind of discernment, that kind of focus, that kind of forward thinking that's so important if you're going to succeed in business today.
Jeff and I are like friends. We're real friends.
We are so you unlock fortune and freedom without all the stress that normally comes along with it.
It all comes down to your why. Your business, why are you doing it? How is it going to change the world and what's it going to do for your family?
I want you to celebrate your success.
Talk about the struggle, but I promise you, the story is in your struggle.
They'll never be able to say that about me because people only see me working hard in anything that I'm doing whenever they see me.
Focused on your success and the success of those around you.
But being that constant in your community, good or bad, whether things are great in the community, bad in the community, be steady.
Unapologetically do business and life on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. Amazing guests living the big ticket life. And we discuss how they do it and the big ticket methods they use. The things that make your life successful so you do life and business on your terms.
In and of itself, the only limitations that we really have on ourselves is the ones that we allow to be put on ourselves. And most people don't look at it in that perspective.
There's nothing wrong with being humble, but there's also nothing wrong with stepping into your superpower and letting people know who you are.
Get ready to do life and business on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. What an honor to have Paul Gowder on the Big Ticket Life show this week with us. When my amazing producer, Chris Stone, said, hey, we got Paul confirmed for the show, and Paul gets like tens of thousands of people together in these communities, I said, whoa, I'm kind of in the presence of a big deal. So, Paul, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, we'll get into who Paul is and what he does, but, man, I just love what you've been able to do with powwows.com because it's a niche. It's such a unique niche, and it just shows and it proves that in our country, you are able to achieve success, and there's no shortage of ways to create value for people and bring people together and overlay that with something you're passionate about. So why don't you dig into what you've done, what you've built? You've built it with your wife, as I understand.
Yes.
You kind of measure powwows.com and the same as years of marriage, which how many years are you up to by now?
26.
Uh-oh.
27.
There we go.
I know we've done our 25th anniversary. Yeah. Yeah. We got married and started powwows.com really just about the same year. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we titled this episode, building, it just went right off the top of my head. Building massive communities, I think is what we titled it. And so I'm going to kind of take a left turn right out of the gate. So obviously powwows are a Native American cultural tradition. It's ingrained in Native American culture. Obviously our nation, for those listening and watching, it goes without saying, although I don't know, I'm still saying it. There's been a tragic history there. And I think it's appropriate to kind of talk a little bit about it and get your perspective, because if you're going to build a community, you have to address the foundation of the community and where everybody getting involved comes together in the parts and pieces of that. So why don't you give us a little bit of history and your perspective on bringing people together through powwows.com?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point that Native people in this country and in Canada have not had a great history, especially their relationship with the government. And there's been lots of issues over the years that we know, Trail of Tears, and now you're seeing a lot of stories come out about some of these residential schools and the abuse that was done. It's an incredibly tragic history. And when I've back in the 90s, when some friends were first introducing me to powwows, that was one of the things that will take you back the first time you go to a powwow, is not just how vibrant and alive that the community still is and the culture still is, but how patriotic across the country. You'll see Native people are incredibly patriotic. They love being a part of this country, even with that rough past. Native people serve in the military higher than any other racial demographic by percentage. Obviously not by sheer numbers, because it's a very small group,
Right.
but in percentages, they serve in a high number. And it's an interesting dichotomy, right? That with these problems, they still serve. But one of the things we found is when I first entered this whole world of powwows, is that it is community. And whether you're going to a local powwow or you're going to one of these big, huge, massive powwows that happen once a year, there is a community there, and there's a group of people who travel together, and week to week they're together, and so you kind of become part of this bigger thing, and it's an incredible group of people, and it was so welcoming back when I first learned it. And that was kind of one of the reasons I started building this. I mean, first I really started building web pages. It was just as a hobby to kind of teach myself how to do the whole HTML thing back when all this was just coming out. But really then, as I started to learn more about powwows and started, some friends were introducing me, helping me make my first outfits and teaching me what the songs meant and all that. It was my way of sharing what I was learning, because I was so excited about, the stuff that people were showing me. I was like, I got to show other people, right? I want to share this. Yeah. And that was kind of how it all started. And from the beginning, it was community. It was people seeing these pages early on and wanting to engage with each other.
Love it. Love it. And I mean, you started this, I always work to do a little bit of recon and research on my guests. And, you referenced on another show, you bought from a local computer store, I think it was, a product or a package called Internet in a Box, which just like I was rolling in the car as I listened, as you said that. Because like that's the way it was done. You bought a software package, and
you did. Yeah, it came with like an FTP.
Maybe
yeah, it came with a little FTP tool, a WYSIWYG editor. All these little things that you could piece together and start playing with this whole web thing. Yeah,
that's wild. Just absolutely wild how it started. And so, again, I want to set the table here about the success ingredients of building good communities. And again, we're approaching this through your heritage, your descendant, Cherokee Nation descendant. Is that correct? Am I saying that the correct way?
Yeah. On my dad's side, I am descendant from some back 2 generations. Yeah, I am descendant, not tribally enrolled with them, but yeah, I do have some heritage on that side. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so, we come at this through your lens, through your heritage. So when you're dealing with communities that have opportunity to come together, but there are fractures on the underside.
Sure.
How do you address that? So like, as are white people allowed to come to powwows? I'll just say it.
Yeah, it's a great question. And in the beginning, when we first opened, our first forums back then, that was, we had that question come up, and still to this day, I got an email yesterday, somebody asking me that same kind of question. And so let me answer it 2 ways. First, powwows are open to the public. Powwows, they want you to come and be a spectator. These are cultural festivals, but they want you to come enjoy the vendors, to go shopping, to see the dancing, to see the singing. They want you to be a part of it. These are open festivals. On the other side, though, when I first started doing powwows.com, it was something we had to talk about and really decide. And these early days in the forums, I had moderators that really helped me do that. And we've always wanted this community to be open to everybody. We try to serve different audiences. So if we have Native people that are coming wanting to learn more about their heritage or feel connected with their tribe, or other people that are powwow, we want to serve that. But we also want to be open to the people who are completely outside the culture and just want to know more. They want to appreciate it. They want to go to their first powwow. So it is difficult sometimes to serve both those. Sometimes there are frictions and rubs between them. Yeah, that was something we discussed early on, is how do we do that? And it continues to this day as a struggle sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you're talking about some significant issues, some significant traumas and tragedies that divide people and create these divisions, unfortunately.
Yes.
But it's cool that you're there to moderate that and, keep your eye on the prize of, this is a great part of culture here on our soil in our country, and it's something that we can share together.
Right. And for me, somebody told me about a Jacques Cousteau quote. Now I'll paraphrase it, but the more you learn about something, the more you appreciate it. And the more you appreciate it, the more you love it, and you'll respect it. So that has always been my approach to people that are kind of outside the powwow world, is if we can share more about the culture, even share a little bit more about some of the traumas, share a little bit more about what powwows are, they'll appreciate it. And maybe that will lead to a better understanding, a better respect. And maybe we can help bridge some of these issues, and future generations won't have some of the same separation and differences that we have nowadays.
Yep. That was the word that was right on the tip of my tongue, understanding.
Yes.
Right. Like so maybe that's the takeaway here as we get into the show, is that if you keep your eye on the prize of creating those moments of understanding with your members, right? I mean, if you create a community where everybody's 100% aligned, isn't that more of a cult than a community?
Right.
Like you're just going to have differences of opinion. You have different ways to accomplish things. It doesn't really matter what we're talking about. But yeah, that message of understanding and respect, really important, especially today more than ever. There's so many external forces that are keeping us away from understanding and respect of one another. So it's cool that you've got that as part of your ethos. So you're active in the community, and you have built your own community. I've also heard how you keep some of what you do private, because people are looking for heritage, they're looking for family tracing.
Yes.
Tell us about what that decision looked like, and how others might choose to differentiate using these different community tools. And we'll get into what all those are too, if you want to.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, yeah.
What's your thought process there?
Yeah, that goes back to my old V Bulletin days. And one of the things I love V Bulletin is you could have this big community with subgroups in it, subtopics, and you could have different permissions and different membership roles in these different subcategories or whatever. So when we were building, we started our Facebook groups, that was one of the things I wanted to replicate. And especially, we have a lot of people that come to powwows.com wanting to know how to trace their heritage. And that is a big topic of discussion, and it's difficult. And so we wanted to have a place where people could come and discuss that and share their journey with each other. And some of that is very personal. If you want to share some of your family's history, your names and things like that. And so I didn't want that to be an open public Facebook group. That is a private. It's open. Anybody can join. We have a vetting process, of course, but anything you post in there is left in the group, and you can't share it out or anything like that. It is private. Just because we wanted to respect people's privacies and let them have these open discussions, whereas opposed to we have a general what we call Powwow Nation Facebook group that is completely open to the public. You can see anything you want in there, because these are more generic topics, and these where we're not worried about privacy and things like that.
Yeah. So, you started 26 years ago, and along the way, what are some of the, I'll ask it this way. What were some of the biggest missteps you took in building the community that is Pow Wows today?
You know, I guess probably our biggest, I don't know, looking back, I don't know if it was a misstep or it was just circumstances of how things happened. But the first decade of powwows.com, I concentrated on letting everything at powwows.com was user generated. We didn't generate our own content. So we had a powwow calendar, and all of the people that organized powwows sent their information to us. And so all of that was generated by these groups. Our forums, all user generated content, right? We had a photo gallery. It was all people sending in their pictures. And that worked really great for us. And we probably put too much emphasis on just being user generated, because when social media hit and people, then there was Facebook. Facebook did a better job of letting people share their user generated content, right? Than V Bulletin did. Or at least, I still like V Bulletin, but that's a whole nother subject. But it was easier for people, and millions more people were going to that. So all the user generated content kind of stopped for us. And then we had to figure out, how do we continue this community aspect without, people posting 1,000 times a day in a V Bulletin.
Right.
Where do we go from here?
Yeah. So as opposed to being a content aggregator,
right,
you had to become a content creator.
Correct.
Yeah. That's a big shift. What were some of the ways you kind of got over that and moved?
It wasn't something that happened overnight. It was something that definitely took a couple of years for us to figure that out. We probably hung on to the whole idea of being a V Bulletin or a forum-based site too long. But in the end, it was, people came to, we had two things really on the V Bulletin. We had a core group of people that came every day because they wanted to enjoy the community aspect of it. They were friends, and so they wanted to interact. We also had another side that are people that were new, and maybe they only came and posted two or three things, but they were looking for a specific set of information, and they used our forums as a way to get answers to their questions. So it was taking that side of it, figuring out what these common questions were, and we started generating articles and blog posts and things about that side of it. And that became some of our first, content that we started generating ourselves, is what were people coming to the forums asking, and how can we serve that group in a different world?
Yeah. Yeah. Really smart. Funny you would say that, because in between my day here, just before I jumped in the studio with you, I was looking at some YouTube videos for my retail business and coming up with those title descriptions, and realizing some content was good that we created and some content wasn't. Like, nobody's really asking this question, so why are we going to post it?
Right.
Yeah. And I guess maybe that's my next question. Like, what is your barometer of content, and like, what's that quality metric you need to see for you to put it up on your entities? Because this is a business, right? Pow Wows, right. It's not a charitable thing. This is a business for you. So what is that metric of what gets time and space and energy from your team?
That's a good question. So for us, the business is, the way we generate revenue is traffic to the website. We're predominantly revenue is determined from advertising. So we need page views. So for me, content is what content is going to resonate the most, get the most reads, things like that. So, and over the years, we've played around with what the best valuable content is. We had some articles in the past that were not political, but a little more divisive, or a little bit more on the side of controversial type topics. And while those generated tons of traffic, it wasn't necessarily valuable traffic. It wasn't maybe the right group of people we wanted. So over the years, we've kind of honed in on the type of content we want to create is any kind of content that's going to celebrate Native culture, going to help people feel more connected with it, to learn more about it, and going back to helping people appreciate this more. And so whether it's an article explaining something, or whether we're doing an interview, or talking about a show like Reservation Dogs, right, on FX, just ways that people can kind of feel that connection with the culture, whether you're Native or not, right? And that's the kind of content that brings value for our community. And it did take a while to get there.
Interesting. Yeah, so you have to find that balance. I mean, we all know controversy sells, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it sells in almost any aspect of life, whether you're talking about digital media, selling magazines, producing a book, making a speech. But finding that balance, that's interesting. So it's not just about, so for you, it's that ad revenue displayed on the website is where that's your revenue path. That's what I'm hearing, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
when we're generating content, we're always, how are we going to get more eyes on the website? That, and there's things we do that doesn't necessarily result in a page view necessarily, but is helping just generate, making people more engaged with the community. But in the end, that is how we get our revenue, is page views.
Yeah. And, you've touched on it. So it's as I see it, and maybe for people watching and listening, they've got something they're passionate about. And they're connected to it through, in your case, heritage, right? Descendant. Maybe they're connected to it in another way, belief system, feeling, pets and cats and dogs, right? Whatever. How do you take and overcome maybe that mental head talk of, how do I take this passion and make it a business without having people feel ill will towards me about it?
Right.
Because you've balanced that for a long time, 2.5 decades.
Yes. And I tell people, in the beginning, it wasn't a business. So, I kind of fell into entrepreneurship accidentally. When I built this, it was really just to build it and to share what I was learning. And it was really, we started looking at it more as a business as bills started happening, right? As we started getting, there were, there's money involved, right? As
Right.
Bulletin grew, we had to have a bigger host and things like that. So that was when we started actually looking at it as a business. And I think that's important. I think as people, try to build out business, especially niche businesses, I think you have to come at it for something that you are passionate about, something that you want to share with others. And you have to figure out how you share that with others in a way that brings them together in a community setting. That's how I feel about it. And if you can do those things, then maybe it can become a monetized business. I think so many people make the mistake now of trying to start these ventures thinking business first. And I think it's so important. You got to think, how do you serve your community? What is the value you're bringing?
Yeah.
Then worry about monetizing. If you're not going to bring any value to people, if you're just writing these generic keyword things that you're just trying to grab that SEO, right, and there's really not any good value in there for the people, then I don't know that it's going to last.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that word value gets, uttered so many times on shows like this,
Right.
And it's not to insult you or anything. It's just, it almost becomes this like nebulous word. So I'll ask you this way. What does bringing value to your community mean for you and for them?
For me, value is, if I am we divide our audience up into several segments, right? So for someone that's outside the culture, if I can provide them with a way that they can find a powwow near them, make their first powwow or their second powwow experience special, like they go to this powwow knowing what to expect and kind of how they can appreciate it, that's valuable to me. And those are for that segment, I love getting the emails from people that say, hey, I just went to my first powwow this weekend, and the email you sent me about what to expect going to my first powwow really helped. And here's the things I enjoyed. You know, that's value.
Can I pause you there?
Yeah, yeah.
What's been, you know, and it might be hard to pick one, but those responses back. I went to my first powwow. I had a great time. Like, what has been the most affirmative message back to you of I'm on the right path with this? Like, what was the best experience somebody had?
The ones that stick with me, those are really special, but the ones that really stick with me, and I can remember when we first started getting these messages and, you know, sitting at a keyboard, tearing up, reading these messages, is we do live streams of powwows too. And so when I have somebody, and, you know, it happened the first time way back in like 2005, 2006, that's serving overseas, and they are feeling completely disconnected from their community, their family, their tribe, and they watch a powwow. And, you know, like one of the first ones we ever had, this guy, you know, serving over in Iraq, and he writes and says, man, I felt connected. I felt like I was there with my family, and I saw my brother dance. I saw my mother dance. Those stick with you.
Yeah, that's special. That's special.
Yeah.
And it's special for twofold, because it goes back to where we kind of started about how Native Americans are per capita very well represented serving our nation.
Yeah.
That's
and it's really fun because I get to work with some of the same people when I go to these powwows. So there's a couple of MCs that over the years have gotten texts from people too, you know, or they'll get an email saying, hey, I'm watching you, and, you know, I'm in wherever, you know, the Philippines or Afghanistan or whatever. And so I've got a few MCs that are constantly coming over to the computer and like, where are people watching from? What countries you got? You know, do you have anybody in this? You know, so people see that, and they want to know, are we getting more of those kind of people? So it's been fun. Those are ones that really will stick with you for a long time.
Yeah, that's very cool. You know, and you said something else, and I think it's always my job to circle back what our amazing guests, and again, thank you for joining me today, share. And that's, you bring value to various groups of people and you split them up, so you know who you're talking to, right? Like, I didn't want to get into the show talking about, you know, this Facebook group tool and this specific tactic and then this software, because by the time somebody might listen to this, it might all change.
Yes.
Like I know you had the privilege and honor, and it speaks to your depth of work. You were one of like a dozen or so people invited by Facebook to expand the group's experience, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, because of your expertise in this. So I think a lesson here is be committed to your craft. You've been doing that for 2+ decades now. Be committed to value, be committed to servitude of your audience, and then really do the work of not just this kind of shotgun approach, but get very segmented and very focused on the value that you can place in different buckets for different people. Is that a fair wrap up so far of our time?
Yeah, you have to know who you're serving before you can bring value to them, right? So many people miss that. And you talk about community. There are so many, tools and software things you can talk about, but I think one of the biggest missteps that people make right now with community is that thinking community is a tool or platform. Community is not a Facebook group. We have a great Facebook group, but that is not our community. Our community, I treat everything I do, whether it's a live stream, an email, an article on the website, or the Facebook group, I treat all of that as part of the community. And I talk to them in these mediums all as they are part of this bigger community.
Community as a whole, not a vertical. Love it. I make these little notes as we go along. I forgot to clarify it in our pre-show. I carve out little moments and reels, right, to get back to people, to put back into my community. And those notes are little moments of value from our 40 minutes together, or whatever much time we spend together on each show. Man, I love the way you think about that. Like, you can't. So really, what you're saying is you can't do one thing over here in the Facebook group and then treat your email content entirely different, and treat how you present on your postings on social channels different, and then have a different face on YouTube. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. No matter how they touch your ecosystem, right? If maybe they're just a viewer on YouTube, maybe they just listen to a podcast episode, they all feel a part of your community. They may not have clicked join on whatever community tool you're using, but they feel it. And so if you don't recognize that and don't treat them the same way that you treat everybody, then they're going to lose that eventually. So yeah, whether, when I write some of my broadcast emails that go out to the entire group, I there's the weekly one, I put a little intro and I talk directly to them, just like if I was starting a thread in a Facebook group. I'm personal, I'm direct, and so email is community, right? Because they feel it on the other end. If you do it correctly, they feel like they are part of this bigger organization or this bigger, group. But if you, and I made this mistake. When I first started building email, I didn't do that. I just sent out these blast, and I felt like, when I really sat down and looked at it, I was just shouting at people, right? I was just, hey, here's this article, go read it. It wasn't making any kind of personal connections or putting any kind of real connection in it.
Yeah, it's funny you would bring up email blasts. I just had an exchange in an industry group about how sales reps just email blast out deals and specials, and
right.
And the expectation is if it's sent to you, you should reply. And I'm like, well, no. First of all, let's take a step back. I forget his name. You're familiar with the email CRM service Aweber, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that the founder of that company is local to me here in Pennsylvania, in the region, next county over. I forget his name now. It's been probably a decade plus since I've had contact in person with him. And he was in a small group presentation with me, and he said, I want you to think about email blasting like having the most souped up Nerf gun pointed at you, and you don't want to play Nerf gun wars.
Right.
And then that person just unloads, 20 different Nerf darts at you. That's what email blasting is. He says, so never say email blasting, because if you say it, you think it, and then you type it, and nobody likes to get blasted, just like what you said.
Yes.
I mean, that holistic approach is so smart, to not forget that the medium doesn't change how you treat your people.
Yes, that's exactly it. And you're talking about email blast. I think another, like you're talking about, just shouting out at people. Gary Vaynerchuk has a book, and I don't know the exact titles, but it's like jab, 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 punch, or jab, 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 right hook, or something like that. And you have to deliver value. Then maybe you can ask them to buy something or to do whatever your conversion is. And that's so true in email. You got to give them value, or not only are you not going, you're just shooting Nerf guns at them, but forget having them reply. You got to get them to open it. And if they're not opening your email, forget even them replying or converting. There it is. Jab, 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 right hooks. Yeah, exactly. Give them value. And
well, I mean, I think about how I treat email. I actually, I'm in the midst of publishing my book, and I sent an email. Hey, just checking in. Remember, our goal together was to get this draft done so we could to get the draft print copy uploaded to a service and sent back before we put it up to Amazon. And we're running up against that window. He says, Jeff, I sent that 3 days ago. It's so easy on your phone to just delete emails, file emails. That's accidentally what I did. I accidentally put his back in his folder because I just mental lapse. But we also get in these mental patterns in these relationships with people in our inbox, people in our social feeds, the channels that we subscribe to and have lost interest in. So I'll ask this question. How have you found a way to kind of shock the water, if you will, shock the system in your communities to wake it up? Because I'm sure you have a little bit of, there's the ebb and flow of excitement and fatigue, excitement and fatigue.
Right.
How do you work through that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I've found work for my community. One is especially email and in our messaging. We talked earlier about knowing who our audience is and really serving different groups. And that is segmenting. We segment the email list. And so I have pre-built sequences for different groups. And so I make sure when people, I give them different opportunities to get on our email list. And so we're serving up, maybe it's an opt-in that says, you've never been to a powwow, I want to go to your first one. I'll tell you what to expect. So I know what group is going to do that. And so as I continue to serve that message up, those people are doing that, and I can continue to engage them in a different way. Right. And that keeps that group of people feeling like they're getting the right information. Whereas opposed to maybe if you are involved in powwows, you're a dancer, you're a singer, I'm giving them another kind of opt-in. I'm giving them another set of emails. Another thing I do, though, talking about energizing the community and trying to do jumpstart things every once in a while. We do live streams. I mentioned that earlier. 15 or so times a year, we actually go to powwows and we stream them. Those are great community rallying points, especially some of the really big powwows that kind of everybody circles on their calendar every year. And so those are moments that we can make sure that everybody on our, regardless of what kind of segment or what kind of part of our community you are, we all want to be online and we all want to be engaged at some of these events. And so that really helps jumpstart it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. So I asked you some missteps. We went over those. What have been some successes that I'll ask it this way: successes that you planned for and achieved, and then successes that came out of left field, and you're like, oh wow, that's cool.
Right. So I can tell the story the first time we ever live streamed it, which is a huge success and not something we ever had on our radar. It was in 2004.
Which 2004 wasn't all that easy.
No, it wasn't. And my wife was actually pregnant with our daughter. And there was a powwow in Oklahoma called Red Earth. And the folks organizing that, I was friends with them. They called me and it's like, hey, Paul, we want you to live stream this. And I'm like, what? Can we do that? And they're like, yeah, sure. And they were into rodeo at the time. And they're like, some of the rodeos we go to, they're live streaming. I was like, okay, let me see so I had to figure out the technology. But then the other, and again, I didn't even think this would work because of what was happening. I was in a wedding that weekend. The powwow was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I had to be back in South Carolina to be in a friend's wedding on Saturday. So they flew me out Thursday. I streamed all day Friday, flew out early Saturday morning. I'm like, it's just going to be one day. Nobody's going to watch this thing. It's not going to work. We thought we were going to have technical problems. It was a huge success. Huge success. Wow. I mean, thousands of people tuned in. The first time we ever did it. And the funniest, and this is how we knew that this would be something that would work. It was Friday at the powwow, and they had decided that year that the first part of the day on Friday would be the dancing, the singing, and then Friday night they shut the powwow down and they had a native rock band performing, and so there was over an hour and a half, 2 hours, and all we streamed was people setting up chairs for the concert. That was some of the best engagement we had all weekend. The chat room went nuts because it wasn't about what they were watching. It was about that they were together. And so that's when we had no idea, right? No idea that people would watch or have the technological ability to watch, or let alone that they would actually feel engaged. So live streaming, never expected it. And it still presents challenges, right? We still struggle with equipment and things like that. And we're playing with different equipment right now, trying to figure out how we can do it better. But that is huge, huge thing for our community. People love the live streams.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. I mean, in 2004, I can't imagine what you would have had to do to be somewhere in a public. I'm guessing this was an outdoor venue.
It was actually it was an indoor arena, and
It
so
was
they
indoor. Okay.
did have an internet connection for us. We were streaming using Windows Media Server. Awful. It was rough, but yeah, we did
Yeah.
it. And it was a little tiny box that I don't even remember how many pixels it was, but it was a little small tiny box.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, we're comparatively speaking, we're very blessed today with the technology, how we're meeting today, how we're coming together
Right.
today. It's like so simple. Like just click a web browser link and boom, you're pretty much up and running. Even if you haven't paid attention to your audio and your microphone and your camera, you're pretty far ahead of the game.
Right.
Yeah, very cool. So as we wrap up our time together, we'll kind of bookend our conversation thematically. So you had referenced, and I haven't seen this show yet. I don't get a lot of time to watch television. You'd said Reservation Dogs
Yes.
as something that brought eyeballs, I guess, interest to Native American culture. I don't know the show, so I hope I expressed that right.
Yes.
Where I'm going with this is my wife. We watched Yellowstone, and there were episodes. If you haven't gotten this far, I'm not trying to spoil it for you, so please don't come at me in the comments or DM me that I ruined your Yellowstone experience. But there were residential school scenes and episodes and little sub character plot lines around that. My wife was fairly surprised, and I said, "Well, that's actually my grandparents. Their mission work was to help the effects of that. They were helping reestablish communities and bring communities back together in Red Lake, Ontario, and so I was aware. So those shows, I would imagine, bring in a good amount of interest to the Pow Wows community,
Right.
powwows.com. So we'll kind of maybe wrap up this way. How can people help Native American culture, Native American peoples today? They get inspired, and maybe the representation isn't great. Maybe the moment isn't the best reason to become inspired, but they're inspired all the same. And they do want to impact change in their own way. How can people do that?
So I'll give you a few ways that I recommend people doing. First of all, is when you see content like Reservation Dogs, or even if you see the story that just broke last weekend where a 14-year-old girl was a 14-year-old Native girl was trafficked to a Marine barracks. When you see that kind of stuff, what positive or terrible, share it, engage with it, talk about it. There are so many, the missing and murdered Indigenous women crisis that's happening all across Indian country doesn't get talked about enough in mainstream media. So it's one of the best things you can do is spread the word about some of these issues. Reservation Dogs is an amazing show because they are tackling, same thing with Yellowstone, they are tackling some of these tragic issues, but they're also sharing parts of the culture that are extremely positive. They're sharing Native humor, which is different, and they're letting people understand what it's like to live on a reservation or to grow up and to go to powwows. So share that content, engage with it. That's one of the best things you can do. I interview a lot of actors and people in this space, and one of the reasons I'm saying, share it and engage with it is because when I interview these people, they talk about when they grew up, they didn't see themselves in TV, or they didn't see themselves in movies or as a book author. Now, all of a sudden, we're having shows like Yellowstone and Reservation Dogs and Rutherford Falls and some of these other, there's a ton of these shows that have now come out. And so this next generation of Native youth that are now seeing them, they can see themselves on TV. What are they going to do, right? So if we continue to share and grow the awareness of this, we're helping that next generation really, really open the boundaries. It's going to be limitless for them. If you want to get involved in like help make a financial contribution, there are a number of organizations I would recommend. And one of those is the American Indian College Fund does a great job of working with Native youth and helping them earn college degrees. That is extremely important. Again, helping that next generation. There's and I don't have their name off the top of my head. There are some missing and murdered Indigenous women charities. MMIWUSA.org is one of them. The National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. Those are great places if you want to make financial contributions to help with that tragedy. That's another way you can get involved. But again, another easy way to do it, if you want to help and become involved and make a difference, go to Pow Wows. Go to these events and buy, right? If you see a vendor selling some things, buy their goods. Shop Native. We have a whole thing on our website. Shop Native. Support these local businesses, these small vendors, these small entrepreneurs. That goes a long way, again, to helping these folks, continue to be able to sell and travel and do all the things that they do. So those are a few things that you can do to really help and make a difference.
Very good. Very good, man. I like that we got to talk about that and share those resources, because it's one thing to have your website, but it's another thing to have you be attached to those, bigger umbrellas, those other movers to help your culture, to help the community. I wasn't aware of that poor 14-year-old girl involved in trafficking. That's one of those things that is just very, very problematic for society, and certainly for that young lady. It's very sad, but I'm glad that you were able to share those resources. I'm so glad you're able to spend time with me today, talking about how you've built this community. I love what you're doing. And we didn't even get to talk about your other sub-passion, Star Wars, as we got a couple minutes. There it is.
At the main
what was it about? What was it about Star Wars for you that just gets you lit up and connected?
I saw my first Star Wars movie at a drive-in, A New Hope, back in '77 when it came out, laying on top of a friend's station wagon with the speaker. Right there. We had our sleeping bags and we laid out on the top of their car and watched Star Wars. I remember going the next day to Kmart and buying my first figure. What was I, like 6-7 years old at that point? So Star Wars to me was my childhood, and there we are. That was this past weekend at Galaxy's Edge. So, it was that first kind of feeling of a story taking you to another world and really connecting with characters. And I love the fact that we now have a growing Star Wars universe. I felt like I went a void for decades without any new Star Wars material. So I'm loving being in this new world of all this content.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you had that experience. It's very cool. And thank you for bringing great experiences to your people, creating those connections. As Paul said, if this is of any of interest to you, please hit up powwows.com, jump on his list. He'll walk you through where to go to your first one, what to expect. He'll relish if you go and then email back, like, I had an amazing time. Here's what I learned. And please go and plan to support the people putting it on and support the people connected to it. Shop Native through, is that a domain or is that on your website?
Shop Native, powwows.com/shop native. Yes, we have a whole directory of Native-owned businesses.
Yeah. So maybe you can't get out of the house. Maybe travel's difficult right now. You can go powwows.com/shop native and support people that way. Time, talent, and treasure. That's what we've all got. That's how we can all impact one another. And in one of those three ways, I'm sure that you can help and connect to the Native American culture in your region and your neighborhood. Paul, thank you. This has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate you pouring into my listeners and sharing your tips on how to build a really great community.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for stopping by. Everybody else, have a great week. We'll see you next time on The Big Ticket Life. Take care.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode of The Big Ticket Life. You've heard from another amazing guest living their own big ticket life, and now it's time to live yours. First, I'd love for you to take me up on my free gift to you. Claim your gift at gift.thebigticketlife.live. That's gift.thebigticketlife.live. See, All your life, you've been told what is and what isn't possible by the loudest voices from the cheapest seats. It's time to finally do life and business on your terms. Sure, you've heard similar things, but without clarity on what can be done, it's easy to have your customers, employees, maybe even partners, and your spouse keep you from truly living a big ticket life. My big ticket methods shift you into that investor seat in your business, away from commodity and away from competition, into a market of one, so you can finally live your own big ticket life. So my gift to you is for you to book your discovery call today, where we'll uncover first the Chivo behaviors, those chief everything officer behaviors that hold you back, and why moving into the investor seat in your own business is critical. 2, we'll uncover the premium position that's up for grabs right now in your market that you're missing out on. And 3, which big ticket methodologies are just waiting to be dropped into your business to explode your sales and profits. So again, thanks for listening to this episode. I'd love for you to take action right now. Accept this gift, book your call, go to gift.thebigticketlife.live. Again, that's gift.thebigticketlife.live.